Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. We are your guides through sordid tales of pop culture, drugs, and saying the word fuck a lot. Our show is best experienced under the influence of cannabis, so now is your cue to light up. Now remember, drugs are dangerous, so please don't hurt yourself or your loved ones.
See, it always has the
But
delay.
do subscribe.
Everybody, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are across the country and around the world. I am James Thomas, and this is the Mile High Podcast. With me, as always, I have my friend Dave. Dave, how's it going, sir?
How's it going? We missed you guys. It's been a while since we had a four-person show like this.
Yeah, it was me. It was just me and you last time.
It was a good show, though. We got a lot of really great response last week because, people like when we reminisce. Like I said on our Facebook page, we got like 38 years worth of memories between the two of us, and we have a lot of stories.
Well, we have a lot of people who are like jumping on it, and now that we're broadcasting on a lot of different channels, we get a lot of people jumping on and seeing it. So this will be the first time that Santore gets to be on there for one of them, and when we go live, and hopefully get a lot of people. And also an introduction. Before we talk about Santore and his movie and everything, I'd like to introduce you to, you may have known her as Nancy, but surprise, surprise, she never was Nancy. My beautiful wife has graced us with her presence. Melody, welcome to the show where you can be yourself.
Hello, thank you. It's so nice to be here and be able to be myself.
That is what we wanted from you from the very beginning. But we understand sometimes still in this world when it comes to marijuana.
Can I just point out one thing real quick?
Sure.
Podcasting obviously is a very good, lucrative business because look at the beautiful house that you guys have built behind you.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Chandeliers and everything.
Yes.
Right?
We appreciate.
And then, of course, Santore, who came out to Colorado with us and everything, has returned to Minnesota.
That's right. I'm back in Minnesota, Minneapolis.
Back
Hello,
in
Minneapolis. I miss you.
We definitely miss you. We are glad that you were able to go back and be with your people, though, because I know
Right.
So
This is the great thing. There's so many negatives about having coronavirus and COVID-19, but the invent of Zoom shows, I think it has really been a positive. So being able to bring Santore still into my podcast, even a couple thousand miles away, it's been amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's great to be able to jump in there and still have you be part of the things that we're doing. So,
Well, I appreciate the invitation, so thank you guys always for that. So, yeah, I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
absolutely. So, for those of you who don't know, tonight is our 90s music episode. As we all know, I haven't prepared anything at all. I do have a James's game, but my printer didn't work, so I'll be reading it off of my phone when we get to that point. But I've got strategy going on. But to start off, we do what we like to do all the time, and I'm going to ask everybody what they've been up to, and I'm going to start with Dave. Dave, what have you been up to?
You picked the guy with the longest answer first. Good job. Yeah, well, I've been watching Schitt's Creek. I've been watching Upload. Me and everyone else in the world watched Hamilton like 5 times over the weekend. But one show that I really am into is a show called on HBO. It's a docuseries called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And it's based off of a true crime book by Michelle McNamara in her search for the Golden State Killer, which was a prolific serial killer and serial rapist in California that was never caught and was lost to the annals of time and just kind of forgotten about. But Michelle McNamara made it her personal mission to find the Golden State Killer. And in doing so, she ended up dying herself because she was having a lot of trouble sleeping after writing this book. And ultimately, she accidentally took a lethal dose of sleeping pills that acted poorly with her other medication. And she ended up dying before the book was even published. So, and if you guys have heard Michelle McNamara, she is married or was married to Patton Oswalt. And her death was very sudden. But then about 2 years ago, her book came out, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And the book was insanely popular. It was an incredible book. I read it incredible book. And then just months after the book came out, they caught the Golden State Killer, who just this week confessed to his crimes, and he was caught through Ancestry.com. And so this show is based off of that book about the Golden State Killer, and the show has been incredible so far.
Mel and I have actually been watching at least the first episode. We really enjoyed that as well.
Did you guys read the book at all?
No.
Definitely go back and read the book. It'll give a lot more detail to some of the killings and some of the different scenarios that they presented. But a great book and a great show so far.
So before we get another thing that you've been watching, Dave, I'd like to address, and this is kind of what we're trying to figure out about doing a live show versus everything else. You can walk on through if you have. So our live on the Mile High Podcast chat room, my buddy Jesse is in there, and we're going to address this right now because he's watching, and let's discuss this. Eve 6, Inside Out, is the best song of the 90s ever. Best 90s song ever. And he says, fight me. So is anyone here, just to start this off since we have somebody in our chat room, anyone here disagree with that?
I have no idea what show you said or what song was.
It's Eve 6, Inside Out.
Anything by Eve 6 is will not be anywhere in the consideration for best song of the day.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Put that out.
I agree with David. With David. Yes. No. Eve 6 is nowhere near 90s gen. They just somehow just slip in a song through the cracks, and it became really popular and overrated and terrible to hear all the time on a radio station. And it was one of those songs that I would change frequently.
Yeah, as we'll discuss, Eve 6 is a direct reflection of Nirvana, who is way more influential, and Eve 6 is just like a watered down.
Oh, now that we're calling him out, he's saying he was trolling. He wasn't trolling. Jesse.
Well, okay. Well, yeah. Well, okay then. He's all right. Yeah, trolling. No, he really meant that.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion. If you think Eve 6 is the best in the 90s, then God damn it, you stand firm on your belief.
Right.
All right. And we'll get into that in a minute. Dave, what else are you watching? You watching anything else?
I pretty much took up all the time for just I'll Be Gone in the Dark. So I highly recommend that. Read the book, but definitely watch the show.
There you go. Santore, you're not a big watcher of things, but have you watched anything since we last talked?
Actually, you know what? Since I moved back to Minnesota, I got back into Netflix, and so I decided, because I always catch reruns on Comedy Central of The Office, so I just went ahead and spoiled myself and started from series 1, episode 1, and I'm in the 8th season now, and yeah, I'm getting caught up. So I actually really think that show is really genius and clever and funny, and I'm glad I started watching it. So yeah, I've been watching a lot of Office lately. So yeah, that's
one
what
of
I've been
my
watching.
favorite. The Office probably gives me 2 of my most uncomfortable sitcom episodes ever, and one of them is the dinner party.
Oh, it's the greatest episode. It's my favorite episode.
House. Yeah, and he's with Jan, and it's just everything goes to everything. But I think one that is way more uncomfortable than that is Michael's Kids.
Oh, I was just gonna say the same exact thing. Absolutely, 100%.
The one where he goes in and he had promised that kid inner city
scholarships or something.
You guys finish high school, I will pay for all of your college, and the entire classroom finished. They did really well, and he had to go back in and pretty much say he doesn't have the money to do it. 2 of the most uncomfortable, like it's emotionally uncomfortable for me to watch those episodes. You know what I mean? Like, of any sitcom ever.
Maybe put a plug in there. If you're watching the Office reruns, definitely listen to the Office Ladies podcast, because it's a lot of real fun insight into the making of these shows.
And that's with Jenna
Fisher and Angela Kinsey.
Yeah. So, Mel, I'm confused to call you Mel.
I know, I threw everyone for a loop.
What are you watching? We're watching the same thing. I'll let you grab a couple. I'll grab a couple.
I'm watching some stuff without you.
Oh, are you?
What?
I'm watching one thing without you. It's Shrill. I'm back on that. I love it. It's got really should do her the honor of like looking up her name because I don't want to keep calling her the girl from Saturday Night Live. 80
Bryant?
That one, yes. 80 Bryant, thank you.
She's a brilliant writer.
Fantastic in this show. And yes, the show, at first I didn't want to watch it because I didn't want another show about a fat girl. I lost 75 pounds myself, so I can speak on this a little. I didn't want another story about a fat girl. She happens to be a heavy-set woman, and the story incorporates that into the plot, but it is not the punchline, and I love it. It's really body positive, and it's really about kind of finding your own voice, and it's an amazing show. And she's such a good actress. I knew she was funny. I just didn't know she had range, and she does. So I've been impressed with that. I'm watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is an older series, I believe, actually. It's been out for quite a while, but it's like a parody of a Broadway musical each episode. It's pretty funny. The premise is she is a crazy ex-girlfriend. There's no need to go any further in that. And I'm watching the remake of Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix.
How is that?
It's really good. It's just like the old ones, except you can't have, anybody else take over the role of, the host. So they don't have a host. You have to read the screen. But that makes sense because you can't replace the voice.
Yeah. Robert Stack is a legend.
Yeah.
So what it is it's a single, each episode covers
it's like one story.
So you don't have that like middle ground where it used to, where it would cover multiple things. But they do pay an homage to Robert Stack because at the end of the base intro that's gone through before,
they show his face. They
show a little silhouette of him and his face. Sorry,
I'm behind you.
Unsolved Mystery, and the door behind me open without anybody in there. And it freaked the hell out of me, but it was So yeah, the only thing I'd throw on to what else, she really hit a lot of what we're watching. We also started because of what you and Burroughs had recommended. We watched the first 2 episodes of What We Do in the Dark, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, funny. It's a clever show.
I really love it. We're just now getting to the part where the girl vampire is watching the LARPers and cosplayers kind of diss the girl. And so I don't know if you remember where that was in the season. I think we're more than 2 episodes in. I think it's 3 or 4.
Wait till you get to the Vampire Council. I think it's like episode 9, and they bring in vampires from all over pop culture into this council. It's so fucking great. So great.
Yeah, no, the city council was the meeting that we were relating to the actual city council. So yeah, those would have been like, I'm trying to think, but outside of that, Mel named the other ones that we did. So yeah, nothing really new that I would say. Like, there aren't a lot of new shows that are happening right now, so you can't really jump out and like, you get to go back and look at shows that you enjoyed from before, like Santori's doing, going to The Office and everything.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much time from what we've been watching this week, but I do want to announce that one other accomplishment happened this week, which is I finished the final episode of Golden Girls. I've been watching that since the beginning of quarantine, episode by episode. And I finally saw the end.
Yeah, we're about the same. Yeah, we're
like,
about the same.
What do I do?
Yeah.
What?
You have to, Golden Girls is a great show. And that's a long show. That's a lot of commitment right there.
That really is a lot of commitment.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I didn't let myself like fall asleep and miss an episode or anything. Like I went back and watched each one. And they're great little series.
So I
don't know what I'm going to do next. Maybe Empty Nest.
You should do Third Rock from the Sun.
Nice.
Have you seen Third Rock from the Sun? That was a good one.
Yeah, I used to watch that one. I had that Tommy Hilfiger coat.
Now it's all coming around. It's all coming around, Mel. So another thing that I watched with this movie had Joseph Gordon-Levitt of Third Rock from the Sun fame. There's a movie on Amazon called 7500, and it's a movie. It's an Amazon original. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is a co-pilot of a plane that gets hijacked, and he's able to close the cockpit, but these hijackers are trying to get access to the plane, and they start like holding people hostage and killing hostages and stuff. It's an hour and a half movie, but it is like from the moment the plane takes off, which is like 5 minutes into the movie, until the very end, it is nothing but nerves and tense. And it's really well written. It's like there's not a lot of like extemporaneous conversation. It's all like very mechanical talk between the co-pilot and the pilot, and then Joseph Gordon-Levitt is just trying to deal with the situation of he's in charge of this plane and people are getting executed in the back, and what does he have to do? Great movie, 7,500 on Amazon. Highly recommend it. With Joseph Gordon-Levitt of Third Rock from the Sun fame.
And there is one other thing we're watching. It's the remake of Perry Mason.
Yeah, we saw the first episode of it. We have to get to the second episode.
I like it.
That's all right.
I like it. It's just a shock to the system because it's a 2020 version of Perry Mason. So there's a lot of like fuck and weird stuff like that. That I watched Perry Mason with my great grandma when I was a kid. So I was shocked the first episode, but I like it and I'm going to stick to it for sentimental reasons.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the remake of Matlock when he was like the Better Call Saul version of Matlock is what's going to happen next. What are we smoking? That's the next question that we normally we kind of bounce back and forth. What is everybody smoking? We'll start with Mel. I'm trying not to call you Nancy, babe.
I don't know. What did you give me? I'm smoking a Gotti yet again. It's kind of become my favorite place. I don't remember the strain, and it's not on the container.
I'm also smoking a Gotti, but my version is City Slicker, and it's a sativa because I like sativa. Dave, what are you smoking?
My friend, I am smoking a pre-rolled called Silver Mountain, and it is from Rocky Road. What's Rocky Road's tagline there, James?
If it's open late, it's Rocky Road.
It's open late, it's Rocky Road.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
And we got some more people in our chat room. Dave, I'm doing a watch party on my own page, so people are jumping in there. But our buddy Maurice, who has jumped in on a couple of different my different things, came in to say hi. And when people have their own things that I can shout out for them, I'm going to shout it out. So if you like great deals, go see my buddy Maurice's page. It's $5, y'all, and check it out. Got great stuff. I got to give a big shout out on that.
And also from the chat line, Christy Potter is saying hello, and she's rewatching The Umbrella Academy. Season 2 is about to drop for Umbrella Academy, and the first season was killer. So if you haven't seen that one, that's definitely another one to go back and watch.
Okay.
You know what? I watched some. I've got about 3 episodes into it. I tried to pick it back up. It's just something that I've never carried, but I think it's now. All right, we're gonna transition into our music thing. But on our transition, we have to talk about specifically today, something that happened is that those of you who know me or have spent any time at a karaoke bar with me knows one of my go-to songs, as it's always been, is Ice Ice Baby. The other one is The Devil Went Down to Georgia. And unfortunately, today, Charlie Daniels, we've lost Charlie Daniels. 2020 is so crazy. I don't even know if he's the first of 3, if he's the last of 3. I don't know where he fits in the
He's number 3 because Nick Corduro died from COVID-19. He was a Broadway star, but also Enrico Manaluni. I'm going to butcher his name because I don't have it in front of me, but he is a very famous music director for movies, and most recently with Quentin Tarantino movies.
Okay.
So he's number 3. He was the third of 3. That's
so
how fucking weird this time is, man.
Right. The weirdest timeline, Kanye is running for president. So here we are. Welcome to 2020.
That's like the least weird thing that's going on. Is Kanye running for president? What the fuck?
He's so rich that he could literally finance his entire campaign online. You know what I mean?
We live in a weird time, dude. We live in a really weird fucking time. I'm so glad that we're in a state that has marijuana, because can you imagine being in these states that have no weed? What a fucking nightmare would that be?
I never used to have alcohol in my house.
Mr. Santori. Mr. Santori's living in a dry state.
Thank you. Yes, I came back to the dry state. Thank you very much. But I'm smoking Minnesota's finest, I believe. I don't know. I got this from a guy, from a friend that knows a friend that might know a friend that might have something. And he did. And it was sold to me, and I got it. And it came from Minnesota, I think. I don't know, but it's good.
Homegrown.
Some of that fine Minnesota ditch weed.
It might have came from Colorado. It might have came from California. Who knows? I just got it here in Minnesota from a guy that knows a guy that might know a guy that knows a guy that has something, maybe, if I'm lucky. Check on next Tuesday.
Would you like to put his number on the internet.
Give me your phone number, and I'll put it up in post-production. I'll put his phone number up and his address.
Okay, yep, I'll do that for you. Yes, we'll promote him.
Yes. For your friend, we have
right. Just for my Minnesota friends that happen to be watching, they don't have anybody they can go to. We can just definitely give the guy that has the number to the guy that might know a guy that has a guy that he thinks he knows a guy.
You're the guy who knows the guy. So if you need,
right, I'm the guy that knows, right?
Who's the guy?
Well, I'm the guy that wanted something, so I had to start the conversation because I was looking. So I'm the guy that was looking. So I'm the guy looking, and then there's a guy that might know the guy that knows a guy that said he saw a guy.
And after all that, Mike found something, right. And is currently smoking it.
Right. Yes, and it's not bad. It's not bad. It's pretty good.
We're not sexist. It could be a girl, too. Who the hell knows?
Well, my bad. It could have been a girl.
Right.
Girl to a guy knows a girl.
Drug dealers as men are. God.
Right.
But it's crazy in 2020. So let's travel back to the 90s. First, though, one of the first people we talk about, because I looked at my list, Dave, and it works in the 90s, kind of, is Michael Keaton as Batman.
Close enough. The 1989 is very close to 1990.
You watched it in the 90s. You had it on just in the 90s.
I've watched it in the 2020s. So, yeah.
What do we think about that? Who's all in for Michael Keaton?
Hell yeah, dude.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm in. I actually saw it in the theater when it came out. So
yes, as did I, yeah.
Yeah, so it was good in the theater, and it was good on HBO and Cinemax, and it's good all around. And Michael Keaton is a fine actor. So
I think we've all agreed on this show on previous episodes that he was one of the best Batmans.
100%.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah.
My one question about that, just because you wrote under here Flash movie, and so I don't know.
Well, they're talking that it's going to be a part of the Flashpoint. I think we were talking about, and I asked you if you were well aware of this Flash timeline, because you are an avid DC fan. And so I was wondering if you could kind of see where Michael Keaton would fit as Batman in that universe.
So here's the interesting thing: is if they decide to do the Flashpoint timeline. Basically, those of you who don't know the Flashpoint timeline, one of Barry's big things in his life is the loss of his mom. So Flashpoint, he travels back in time and he has the ability to save his mom from the reverse Flash. A whole bunch of things get messed up. Superman is kind of a bad guy. Wonder Woman is fighting with Aquaman. There's a lot of big things going on. The basic Batman story along those lines is actually that it is not Bruce Wayne who's taking up the mantle of Batman. It was Thomas Wayne, his father, who, after the loss of his son, decided to become the Caped Crusader. Now, the loss of Bruce also drove his wife, Martha, crazy, and she was the Joker. So the concept of Michael Keaton coming back as Thomas Wayne versus Bruce Wayne would be fascinating. And it works for me. There's a lot of levels where I can see Michael Keaton play. I would be fine with him as the old Batman Beyond character. But if it's specifically tied to the Flash movie, then Michael Keaton will come back as Thomas Wayne and not Bruce Wayne, which is good because Thomas Wayne is much older. And so it's a good characteristic play out of that. So that's what I imagine. That way they can say he's coming back as Batman, which is technically true, but he's coming back as Batman as Thomas Wayne. So
that's a cool concept. That's very cool.
That is a really cool concept. Let me see. Anything
hey James,
in our chat room, Dave?
Speaking of the chat room, Josh Youngberg is in the house tonight. We want to give a shout out to Josh. He's one of our oldest friends. He grew up on Truckee and Pacific with us. So we want to shout out to Josh. Let's see. Christy says that fuck Kanye and Marvel is better than DC. So chat room's blowing up tonight. So this is nice and fun.
That Marvel is better than DC in every aspect except the television.
And that's for right now.
Shit.
Yeah, wait until Falcon comes out. Wait until what is it? Vision and WandaVision comes out. Then I think you might change your tune on that. But you're pretty loyal to those DC shows.
I am W fan, man. I will watch them all. I started Stargirl. I have to catch up with it, and I started Stargirl. But we're traveling away from the future. We're going with it. We're going to go back and talk about the 90s. And specifically what we're going to talk about is the 90s music. Now, Dave, Mel, and I, we all went to high school in the 90s. Mike was really old already. So
Mike was a man in the 90s.
He was a man at a bar already. Thinking about being dead or famous by 25, I'm sure. So yeah, we're talking 90s music. And the first question that Dave actually put out here, and I think it's a really good question, is where do you feel like the 90s rank on the best, as far as the best decades of music? Now, let's play pop music, quite honestly. Let's limit this out, and we're not going back to classical.
You can't. Oh, yeah.
No, you say no.
Oh,
you
yes.
want to go all the way back to
It's the 90s. I'm not going to go back to classical. I'm not. I promise I won't get technical, but I'm not limiting it to pop.
All right, now you won't limit it to pop.
Okay.
So the 90s, the question made up about the 90s is, where do they stand on the greatest? And since Mel clearly had a visceral reaction to it already, tell us, Mel, where does it sit? Is it a decade? Is it a musical decade? Would you consider it a musical decade?
Yes, but it was very canned. We had perfected videos and pop culture in the 80s in a way that we had never been able to grasp before. And so I think the 90s, it's tough for me to like rank them. They're not high on my ranking as far as like the past 10 decades as far as music, but I will give them this. There was a lot of crossover. That's why I didn't want to cut out anything that wasn't pop. Just think about it, like Shania Twain. I think like Anthrax and Puff Daddy did something together. Like if you think about that, there's a lot of crossover and recognition. I know we've crossed over before, like Elvis did rock. Elvis was not the first person to do rock, but in the 90s, there was a lot of crossover and recognition that I think was new. And I think it opened people's minds. Like, that's when I first started listening to like hard rock that wasn't just the classic rock my parents knew. Because I didn't, live in an area where I had a lot of friends that listened to that otherwise. So it was a crossover decade.
Interesting. Santore, I know you're a big music guy, and I know you are too, Dave. Make me laugh for you. Santore.
Interject real quick. It is Public Enemy in Anthrax, though.
Thank you. I couldn't remember, but yes. So please continue.
Santore, what's your call on it? Where do you feel like the 90s rank as far as music?
Well, I was gonna say it was Anthrax and Public Enemy as well. I'm sorry, Melanie, but yeah.
That's okay.
But no, she was right about the crossover because of the fact that it was going on in the 90s, especially with an album that was made for a movie called Judgment Night, and with Emilio Estevez and I forget who else was in. Jeremy Piven was in it, I think it was, but it was about these guys getting lost in Chicago and whatever. But anyway,
across the city in the middle of the night.
Yes, and they had like a lot of crossovers. Cypress Hill was with somebody, I forget who. Pearl Jam was with somebody, but I want to say for me, the '90s was basically Red Hot Chili Peppers, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and of course Nirvana. And a lot of people really, and I know Dave does too, really like Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. I'm really going to piss people off on it. I really wasn't a big fan. I think Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell were much talented singers than Kurt Cobain ever was or ever will be, in my opinion. But it was a time of grunge and all that. And I have to say the year 1997 is when music started going really bad to the point where it's really bad now, in my opinion. And that has to do with the fact of a band called Limp Bizkit. I blame them for everything. So,
as you should.
That's the year I graduated. That's the year I graduated.
Right. And that was the year that the music went bad. So you heard it here first and from me. So if anyone has to say that or hears it later, just know it came from this source. But yeah, 97 was when music started going really bad.
Keep in mind, Mike was middle-aged in 97 already, so...
I was not middle-aged. I was still in my 20s. I was still in my 20s. I wasn't middle-aged. I'm middle-aged now, damn it. No, I actually graduated in 91, and I actually went to a Lollapalooza in 92, which was probably one of the best shows I've ever been to.
Nice.
But yeah, because Red Hot Chili Peppers headlined it. Soundgarden was there. Pearl Jam was there. Ice Cube was there with his band called Lynch Mob and Lush and Jesus Mary Chain, and it was great. And then it just got all hyped up later on down the road, like music does. Everyone gets a piece of something that's good, and then everyone gets involved, and somehow everyone turns it into shit. And that's what exactly Limp Bizkit did. So
there you go. Bizkit killed the 90s music and music in general for Santore. Dave, I got to admit, I was playing with the Facebook page off of my computer, and I saw that you were really good at that, so I'm completely out of it, I promise now. I do see you for comedy. But before you give us your presence, why don't you tell me what everybody is saying in chat?
So Jesse Martinez is saying that she thinks that the 90s is right behind the 50s and then the 80s. And so right behind the 50s and the 80s. That's kind of Christy said that grunge and rap were the two defining styles that come out of the 90s, and I totally agree with that. And we'll talk about that later on. But a lot of good conversation in the chat tonight.
Nice. Jesse is a guy, but he's a guy who loves Eve 6, so we'll see what's going on with that. Dave, so you're monitoring that. What's your ranking? Where do you put the 90s in like the grand scheme of music?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question over the last couple of weeks because Santori's right. Like the tail end of the decade, like the quality just dropped off. This is when we're seeing the rise of the boy bands again. And I mean, like the music quality just really dropped off at the last couple of years of the decade. But the first 7-8 years of the decade is incredibly influential even today. And some of the best music that we know has been put out in that first 8 years. And so I would rank them right behind the 60s. Just because the 60s is, very political, a lot of artistic creativity going on in the 60s, and more of a pointed message going on. The 80s was, like you said, Mel, like this is when technology was reaching its peak. This is when the videos were the big thing. So music was just like exploding. There's so many different types of music coming out of the 80s. And the 90s, I would say, falls right behind that. And the reason I say that is because this is the rise of Napster. This is the rise of grunge music. Nirvana, whether you like them or not, Nirvana set the tone for the entire 90s. They virtually created a whole new genre of music that people are still trying to emulate to this day. Rap. Early 90s rap is the best rap that we will ever have. 80s rap is really good. 2000s rap is fucking horrible. Today's rap is absolutely horrible. But fucking early 90s rap, that was the best that genre peaked at that very moment. So I say it's very influential. Plus the technology. Technology comes so far from the 80s to the 90s. I mean, you have look at all the concerts that you've seen. I mean, like concert venues exploded with technology and adding effects and stuff. And one of my bands, Nine Inch Nails, really redefined that. So when we talk about most influential bands, I'm going to talk about that, but more on the technology side. Technology was huge.
I will give Nirvana credit. It's one of the few alternative bands that I was introduced to in middle school. I specifically remember like the couple grunge kids we had in my middle school making fun of all of us for listening to Nirvana because they were, more commercial for the time. But I liked them. And my kids, even to this day, the reason that they ever bothered to learn how to play guitar is because they listened to Nirvana. I mean, they are still very influential. I don't mean to take away from any specific influence from the 90s. I just mean overall, it was still it was just manufactured a little bit to appeal to, like you said, the big stadium crowds. And that's fine, but it's just not for me, I guess.
So I'm going to put like my ranking, and talking to me about music is like talking to me about sports. I only care about that shit. So, and I have a weird aspect that everybody else doesn't have from those times. For one, in the 90s, I was in high school, and I was a theater guy. So I was listening to, like, musical theater at that time. I listened to a lot of Les Mis and everything. So I was really based out of pop culture or what was played on the radio more. I would say that the 90s, for me, has more standout songs than other decades do that I enjoy to this day. I definitely think that the 90s continued the trend that the 80s kind of did, where the music you listen to defined your clique, your social status, your the people that you were around for the most part. And so I was kind of a wanderer in a field because I did listen to Nirvana. I liked Phoebe Hawkins. I loved Garth Brooks. And Garth Brooks, I mean, the 90s was Garth Brooks' time. I mean, this is Garth Brooks, to a degree, owned the 90s.
Sorry, go ahead.
But that's where I would definitely lay it. It's for me on a personal level, I like the music of the 90s. But I also like the music of the early 2000s and the 2010s. I'm a sucker for a good pop song. You throw some Shakira on, I'm jumping in. So once again, much like sports, don't take anything that I have to say about this subject as any kind of knowledge whatsoever. I'm just felicitating the conversation. But yeah, no, I mean that's really where I would lay that out. I think that the 90s continue that 80s trend of like click, and I just didn't have a click that I really jumped into.
Damn, I wish that was your lover, Sophie B. Hawkins. That was your song. He said Sophie Hawkins. I was trying to think of the song. Yeah, damn, I wish I was your lover.
Baby.
There was some very vanilla. There's some very vanilla songs in the 90s.
I like some really white songs, man. I like a song specifically for white people. Like there's an album from the 90s that it would play that and What If God Was Us by Joan and everything.
Okay, I think that was early 2000s.
No, it's definitely not those in the 90s. I know it was because I recorded it because I recorded a bunch of videos off of MTV. Which here's how I did it. I recorded like old school mixtape, but I did it with the VCR and but I don't know anything about music, so I'd see the video. I'm like, this is pretty interesting. I'll record that. And I watched it back, and it varies, man. It's some country shit. Because I've had that tape for 20-something years, and I randomly have watched it. Every song that I put on there, I know. Like John Cougar Mellencamp with that one girl where they sing Pride.
Rattle on what? Fire? Something?
Yeah.
Something rattle on fire.
Bright Eyes Calling?
No,
Wild Eyes Calling?
Yeah, Wild Nights.
Wild Nights.
Yeah, Wild Nights. Thank you.
Wow,
the Van Morrison cover.
Yeah.
Michelle DeNignicello for
my favorite album out of that time. I think I love Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill. I'll say time and time again. Probably one of my favorite albums ever. One of the best albums. And I'm talking about full albums, song from beginning to end, and the extra song. I can let the thing play from beginning to end and enjoy entire Jagged Little Pill.
Hey, just for the record, she doesn't know what ironic means. It's like rain on your wedding day. That's not ironic. That's unfortunate.
That's what's ironic about it, Mike.
No, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's not ironic. It's just unfortunate.
She wrote a parody song making fun of that.
Well, exactly. See, she knows it too. She's just, it's unfortunate. It's not ironic.
So the next question is, we'll start with Dave because he can let us know what's going on in the chat and let him take out from there. If there was a genre or an artist that most defines the music of the 90s, who do you think that is? Dave, you can answer that question. You can tell us if anybody's saying it in the chat room because I see a lot of people. Like I got a bunch of people on my co-stream or my live stream that I'm doing a watch party I'm doing. I got like cousins, Potters in there. Like there's a crap ton of people that showed up for this watch party.
Yeah, I'm not getting a lot of folks saying like what bands are defining the generation, but like Christie's into Korn. Korn was fucking great back then. I mean,
first album.
That was one of the first like heavy metal bands I got into, like Pantera, and Korn. That was like they owned the 90s in the metal scene. We're talking some Biggie and Tupac here with Corey Kurt. So, and I'll be talking a little bit about rap as well in my answer, because I think that there are, I think I kind of already touched upon my answer earlier, but I think the genre that really defined the 90s was rap. Of all the music genre, rap, like I said, hit its peak. You had Biggie, Tupac, Dr. Dre. Fucking Dr. Dre set the tone for the 90s, and everybody else tried to follow. But you have the emergence of Outkast. You have Snoop Dogg. You have fucking Jay-Z. I mean, this all happened in the 90s. And then you have, like, the East Coast, West Coast thing. You have fucking Suge Knight hanging Vanilla Ice out of a window. I mean, the 90s was so great with rap that I don't think you can ever capture what happened in that 10 years for any kind of musical genre. So I think the 90s rap really defined the 90s. And so that would be my genre.
Interesting. Yeah,
Ice Cube. I forgot to mention Ice Cube. So thank you, Christy.
Oh, yeah. We got Ice Cube, man. I would say that one thing I would say about 90s rap is at near the end of it, it became very like wrestling with no limit labels and versus the death row labels versus the, these label battles near the end were pretty goofy in the movies that came out with it. All pretty, I think. But early 90s to 90, almost 97, I'll agree with Santore to a certain degree. Like up until 97, like rap dominated.
You were having fucking rap songs. Number one in the world were rap songs. Dr. Dre rap songs. I mean,
a white guy had to come in and rap as tough as anybody else. That pretty much killed rap, which is sad because he was a good rapper, but that was it. Like, it ended the day that Eminem came out. Santore, what about you? What genre? What band? Give me the defining of the 90s. Who defines the 90s in your mind? Genre, band?
Well, for me, it would be Pearl Jam, and like that whole grunge area, like Soundgarden, Nirvana, Alice in Chains. And then you had, the good metal, like he said, Pantera, Korn, of course, Slayer was there. And then Metallica came out, and then they ruined everything. Their album, they showed that they were a bunch of, just we're in it for the money kind of a bit. So their soul and everything else was sold. They sold everything out for what, people still think they're a great band today, but I don't. I stopped listening to them after Master of Puppets. But anyway, but yeah, and just like when I hear like 90s music, and he's right about the rap. I mean, the rap was better then than it is ever and will ever be. I mean, you had the Godfathers. I mean, you still have some Public Enemy is still out there doing stuff, and good for them. They need to. We need to hear Chuck D right now. I mean, just that kind of stuff, because I mean, it's real shit. And it was like, it was good, and it was, had soul and had rhythm. But for me, it was always about grunge. I mean, I think in the 90s, I think of, grunge era, like everyone grunge rock, which is funny because grunge came from Neil Young and Black Sabbath, but then it became really big and popular. Just the sound became really popular like in the early 90s. And then, of course, Fred Durst came and ruined everything.
Fucking Fred Durst. I want to agree with Santore. Grunge is one of the few genres that got better as the decade went on, whereas most of the other genres really declined. And I want to say that because Soundgarden's sound, which is amazing when they first started with like Bad Motorfinger, by the time they got to Black Hole Sun, their sound was defined. Their guitar playing, their instrument playing was great. They still had the same edge and the same kind of artistic vision with their music, but it was just better. Nirvana was getting better. Pearl Jam, even today, Pearl Jam is still innovating so many years later, but throughout the 90s, they redefined themselves every album they put out in the 90s. So grunge got better. Everything else peaked early and then really fell off towards the end.
So we got grunge, we got rap that has been discussed. Melody, I'm going to get your answer real quick. But Dave, I have to go back to something that Santore said because I feel like it's something that I want you to address. Metallica, man. You have anything to say about what Santore said about Metallica?
No, dude. Santore's right on. Once Metallica put out the Black Album, the first few albums, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, they were really they're produced with raw. They just let the music speak for themselves, and then they went to the Black Album, and there are some really great songs on the Black Album, but way overproduced. And I think Metallica lost their way because they have not put out anything resembling the first few albums since the Black Album. So Santore was 100% right on there.
I was trying to start beef where there was no beef.
Sorry, buddy. Next round.
By the way, Christy Potter hates Pearl Jam, and I am currently disowning my cousin. So I'm sorry, Christy. It's been an excellent run.
So I'm gonna go with. So we have grunge, we have rap. No, which one of these guys are right, or are they both wrong?
Oh no. I think we all said it. I think it was rap. I mean, for me personally, that's what I listened to a lot in the '90s. It was like, and it was a lot of rap. Like grunge for me was like I said, Nirvana. And I'm familiar with the Black Album, but I know that's not grunge, just for the record. But yeah, '90s was heavily influenced by it. But that's what I meant by the crossover is, people who didn't normally listen to that were all of a sudden listening to that, and it became huge. People like, Lauryn Hill, Outkast, Snoop. I think my favorite album of the entire '90s is the one that Dave just put up, The Chronic. I probably listened to that. I could probably still recite it to this day. The whole album, probably.
I've been listening for the last 2 weeks since we've been planning this episode. I've been listening to it nonstop. It's now on Spotify. The whole catalog is on Spotify. So, yeah, I've been going back and listening to Dr. Dre. And if we're talking about a single artist that defined the '90s,
yes,
fucking Dr. Dre.
Yes.
Absolutely.
He opened a lot of doors for a lot of people.
I'm going to go with Garth Brooks to help define the '90s. You guys are going to knock me and say I'm wrong. But let me explain my reasoning why country and Garth Brooks defines the '90s to me to a certain degree. Because country was always set off to the side. Country had been its own genre for 30, 40, 50 years before that. Garth Brooks was making challenges to rap, to grunge, to everybody else on these Billboard charts, and no country star had ever done it to the level that Garth Brooks has. For the longest time, Garth Brooks was the highest recording solo artist in the history, outpacing Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley. So I think if you look at it in a grander way, I think that the country that exists today, like as far as country music that exists today, and kind of the mixture of pop, country, and rap, all started in the '90s, and they really started with Garth Brooks because he transcended out of country music into the regular music ethosphere. And I just like to be, you guys put, I had to do something different. I can't agree with you guys, so I had to make up my own thing. But it was made up with solid evidence behind it. So
and you know what, James, I'm right, Mel's right, Santore's right. And you're right, because this is one of the things, like when Dr. Dre was the single most profound artist when we were growing up, but our parents were listening to something completely different. And so what is prolific and inspirational to them is going to be completely different than us, because we grew up with a much different taste in music than them. So Garth Brooks, absolutely. He defined the '90s for old people. So I just want to put that up.
And that is part of what I meant by crossover, is that things like country became listened to by other people who didn't. I admit, I mean, my parents were musicians. They did a lot of weddings and stuff. So I heard country music, older stuff. I was familiar with like Alabama and that kind of stuff, and even older. But at that time, like, I was familiar with Garth Brooks. Like you said, it was the top selling album for a reason. Like, everybody listened to it, but it didn't last.
And the chat room is actually agreeing with you, James. So, Buzz was backing you up on the chat.
Yeah, I love the chat room.
They're all wrong, mind you, but they're still backing you up either way.
But it's impossible to answer a question about what was most influential about a decade you lived in without putting your own personal spin on it.
Yeah, because none of us ran music back then.
No.
Because he was like 50 in '97. But
Well, I mean, basically in the 90s, you got rap, you have grunge, you have Garth Brooks, and don't forget Dave Matthews Band for some fucking reason.
Oh, I like them.
I
He
like
had a
Dave
great
Matthews
drummer.
Band.
He is a great drummer.
And you're not allowed to talk shit about Dave Matthews because both the Potters are on and they are avid
Just
Matthews
saying,
fans.
I was never a fan. Not to put Dave down or anything. I just you got to have a taste for Dave.
No,
That's all I'm saying.
like Dave Matthews.
His shows are very fun.
Yes.
If you went to college, you like Dave Matthews and the Beatles. But I would trade Dave Matthews for Bare Naked Ladies any day. Fight.
Ooh, no.
Christy, I don't endorse this at all. I'm a fan of. No, I've gone to a couple of Dave Matthews shows, man. They're a lot of fun. I mean, the music is good. It's enjoy. You have to be in that. It's like the Dead. You know, I hate the fucking Grateful Dead, but people love them. Yeah. You know, and Dave Matthews is kind of along that same line. John Mayer as well. You know, kind of like jammy bands, but they put on a good show, and I like Dave Matthews pretty good.
I would say Dave Matthews over Bare Naked Ladies, though. I will.
Me too. And Dave Matthews, his percussion is on point. Yeah, it's very sharp. Yeah.
Come on, chat room, back me up. Bare Naked Ladies versus Dave Matthews. James has got me right about that. So we actually gave you your seed point in here was what we were listening to, but we all kind of discussed on the other things what we were listening to. So I'm going to kind of jump a little ahead, and I'm going to ask, I'm going to start with Melody this time. What genre do you think reached peak in the 90s? What do you think? And I know that we've had kind of said rap has, but there's an argument to be said that it didn't. What genre do you think this is it? This is as far as it got. It never got better than.
Okay, I'm not saying all rock, but to me, the alternative grunge Seattle scene peaked in the 90s to early 2000s. And it has influenced many other styles of rock, and I hear it, and I love it, and that's great. I think rap still stands a chance. You know, I get it that unfortunately the main people that we hear, I mean, I don't like Kanye's stuff. I don't even know whether or not I could say if I think he's brilliant. I think I dislike his music so much I'd be that biased. I like 2 songs by him, and I love those 2 songs only. But you know, there's a lot of good rap right now. I mean, Kendrick Lamar has put out great stuff. There's been a lot of other very new stuff, and with all the conflict going on right now, that's going to influence expression. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm holding out hope that rap will come back to that. And I think that with the advent of the internet, we'll see that soon.
There you go. That's a pretty good argument. Santore, what do you think? What peaked?
I agree with
all music. I know that all music peaked in 97 and then
it died in 1997.
And then it was done. But if you narrow it down to one kind of form of music, what would you say?
It would be alternative rock, like she said. I'm going to agree with her on that. I mean, and I do have hope for rap because of, you know, what's going on. Like I said, you know, Chuck D and the boys need to come out of the woodwork. Ice-T needs to come out of the woodwork. They need to come out because there's a lot of shit going on. This is kind of like, you know, the stuff that, you know, Bruce Springsteen brought up at one of his, I think it was a Rock Hall of Fame, but he's like, you know, we need like Willie Guthrie today because of issues. You know, I'm saying that the same thing about Ice-T and Chuck D and Cube. They all need to come out and they need to, like, you know, speak their mind about what's going on in society today and probably put people in check, you know. And yeah, go ahead.
Produce the younger groups that are saying those messages now in the style that's popular now. You know, that's what they could do. They could empower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Public Enemy did just come out with.
They did.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, and I'm all right with that. And I'm just saying, this needs more of that. But like I said, like it was a genre of, you know, alternative rock, and then it was an introduction to the genre of bad music after that. So. That's
97. And Tori went down at 25, and he never looked back. So I think I know what your answer is, but what genre died in the 90s? What peaked and is in its valley right now? What do you say?
Well, I've already discussed the rap peaking. I really liked your answer, though, Mel, not Nancy. I really liked your answer, though, and I have to agree with you. Like, once Kurt Cobain died, then people stopped listening to grunge music, and it just couldn't sustain itself.
Yeah.
Lane Staley died. I mean, you just, when you have your two heaviest hitters of your genre die, you can't sustain itself. And unfortunately, they inspired a lot of different types of music. Like the heavy metal I listen to is directly directly inspired by grunge rock, but it's not grunge rock. It's a different type of metal. And I don't think there's really any grunge bands out there anymore. And so it really peaked, and now it's kind of gone away. But people said that about punk as well. And then punk became big again. Rap is down, but rap is going to be big again. Especially after everybody comes out of quarantine, there's going to be so much great fucking music coming out of this. Rap might have the resurgence that you were talking about.
Yep.
I would argue that there's music on all those genres right now that you can only find on YouTube that people don't know the names of. That is pretty great. My kids bring along things that I have no idea about, and it's not played on regular things that are pretty impressive versions of rap, grunge, a bunch of different things that they've exposed us to because we have so much access to music. My answer, though, the genre that peaked in the 90s was barbershop.
In the 1890s.
I think barbershop, the episode where Homer, the B Sharps, when they released their album after with him.
I have to live with this.
I understand that episode, actually, I think it took place in the 80s, but I'm going to say the episode itself played in the 90s, so that barbershop peaking in the 90s. Dave, is the chat room agreeing with me on Bare Naked Ladies yet?
Actually, everybody has chosen to ignore your question because it's such a silly one. Christy wants to make it known that she is not the Dave Matthews fan that her husband is, because she took offense to me calling her a Dave Matthews fan because she's a Jason Mraz gal.
There you go. That's probably why Potter stopped watching.
Are they having a beef? Is there an East Coast, West Coast between them I'm unaware of?
I think it's well known that she doesn't like Dave Matthews. I misspoke.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Because Bare Naked Ladies are better, Chrissy. Gordon's a great album. People who went to college listen to Gordon. That's how it works. Favorite music memory of the 90s? I don't know. I have no answer to that. Like I said, Jagged Little Pill is a music memory of me. I told you the thing about the tapes that I played. Those are my music memories of the 90s. Music and sports were things I just did not give that much of a shit about, that I thought about too much. But I will give it to somebody who probably gave a more shit about it, and I'm going to jump into Santore. Santore, what's your favorite music memory of the 90s?
Lollapalooza, too, with Soundgarden, Pearl Jam Ministry, Ice Cube, Lynch Mob, Lush. Just Mary Chain. That's probably one of my favorite shows. And plus, not only that, but just going to the concerts, like, all summer long was great, going to Pine Knob, Michigan, and seeing like Danzig and Pantera. It was just a great time to go to concerts because White Zombie was blowing up then, and just a good time. I mean, just outdoor summer fun. So every time I think of the 90s, I just think about going to concerts and listening to good music at the time instead of like today.
I went to the
Since
cool
1997.
You
went to where?
Cool concerts are great.
In the 90s, where they could play people who played songs in like the 50s and 60s. They're like, next up the Zombies, and
Sadly, the cool concerts are now bands from the 90s.
Yes. If you want to see any of these people, go to the cool concert.
Bare Naked Ladies on the next Cool 105 Cool concert.
It's been 1 week. Never mind.
What's your favorite memory from the 90s?
Listening to The Chronic in cars that bounce and just hanging out with them, smoking weed in them, like blasting it and singing along to Let Me Ride.
Nice.
The cars that go boom, and we like the boom. Sorry.
Oh, no, that was fun. No, all good. And then also, it's not great music, but every summer, our Six Flags in the Bay Area had like a summer jam at the end of summer. And it was always like a couple cool people maybe. And it was mostly just, kind of up and coming cheesy people, but just going because it was the 90s. So you'd wear your like bikini top with your overalls with only one side on for some reason. I think we were doing that then, right? Yeah, that was always fun.
Picture of me with
The overalls, yeah.
Because
girls, what? I mean, yeah.
even when you're self-conscious about yourself in a two-piece, like wearing the overalls over it is like suggestive, but you feel confident still. I love that. It was the end of summer.
I still wear that.
I totally didn't get my senior picture with my buddies Lewis and Anthony with my overalls looking like that at all. That would.
You were James, if I can recall, you only had the one strap. You had the flap down and the one strap.
Yeah, that's what we would do.
Yeah.
I would do that.
So would I. See, I was like crisscross, except like.
But front ways.
I was the front ways crisscross. I bucked the system. Dave, favorite music memory of the '90s?
So I'm very high right now, and I'm really reminiscing about the '90s because there's so many good things happen to music. So number one, smoking weed with you and all our friends at the Truckee Pacific, listening to the Chronic, and listening to Ice Cube, and that was a lot of fun. I saw David Bowie and Nine Inch Nails together. That was incredible. And then fucking seeing Pantera Wine Zombie up at Red Rocks and meeting Vinnie Paul from Pantera. I mean, that was like 99 even. So that was the awesome way to end the decade. But a lot of great musical memories.
Yeah. See, yeah. I mean, music. It's weird. Music truly in my life has played as a background of a lot of what I've done. So, but yeah, it's right there with sports. Fine, I'm at a concert. Who cares? You know what I mean? Fine, I'm at a baseball game. Who cares? You know, I just like being places. I like people. I like people who enjoy shit, and people who enjoy sports and music get really psyched when that shit happens. So I go to those events. So we're about to do a James's game, but I want to do something really weird right now. We're going to promote ourselves. We're going to take about 3 minutes and get some things done. I have to step out real quick, and then we're going to start the James's game. So we're going to do our promotions, but everybody in the chat room, everybody on my Facebook page, everybody watching, everybody just hang out for a minute. We'll be right back. But here's our promotions. So, quick plugs. I'm going to start with Dave, because you may be the only person that has anything to plug.
I do have stuff to plug. About 2 weeks ago, I put out a new book called Quarantine. It's a short story that I helped develop for a anthology that my publisher's doing, and it's a horror story. It's actually a ghost story, but it's set in with a guy who has tested positive, and he's being miserable and sick inside of his house all by himself, and he starts having weird haunting experiences. And so you don't really know if he is going crazy because of the virus or if he's actually being haunted by a ghost. And in that book, I love to give homage to all my friends in my books. And so there is an Officer Watson and an Officer Santore that are play an integral part in Quarantine. So, yeah. So go to Kindle, go to books. Was it BarnesandNoble.com is the Nook. You can go and find it anywhere there's an ebook available. Quarantine.
Nice. So yeah, check out Quarantine. Santore, do you have anything to pitch?
Well, that's what I've been working on. I'm working with a friend of mine, John, who has appeared on my Santore Unplugged show. We call him Dr. Detroit. He's doing audio cycle, and what I am doing, I'm mixing my acoustic guitar and electric guitar riffs to his drum beats and other music that he's doing. So that's all I got going on right now. And this, whenever you guys invite me to come on your show, this is all I got.
Well, you and I are gonna do something that I'm gonna talk about in just 1 second. That you don't know that we're doing. We talked about it, but I haven't told you.
Yeah. Sure. Tell us all now.
No, nothing for me.
Nothing for you.
What happened to your music show? I was anxious for the music show.
I have a whole I will do it, but I have discovered that I don't really want to. I'm not sure I want to do a show by myself. I have to figure out how I want to handle that. I got a bit of stage fright when I started thinking about doing it on my own for some reason, and it's
What
weird.
about that? What about your lady show? You guys had a show. You and the
I hosted
ladies.
that, and I did very well.
Yeah, where you got? Yes, I thought that was a good show. I thought you guys were gonna do more.
Yeah,
well, we are.
We're
going to do more of those. Yeah.
Okay.
I also have like a music thing that I started to do and chickened out on for some reason.
If you guys
now that I've gotten my feet wet, I think it's time for me to.
Yeah, it may be a YouTube video that she did. It may not be streaming live like this, but we'll work on that. I want to shout out to Corey, me and Santori's buddy Corey from the Jungle from Disney.
Corey.
He did point out that he got to smoke with Burton and Dino in '97 after a show. I'm sure that means something to understand music.
I think it's Deftones.
Corey?
Deftones, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Deftones.
Oh, the Deftones. Okay, not the Pretenders who sang the beginning of Friends, right? Who are those?
The Rembrandts. The Rembrandts.
Yeah, Pretenders and Rembrandts, very different bands.
Different bands. Totally. Christy Hines and Pretenders. Yeah. Yes.
I have one more thing to plug, James. Yeah, one more thing to plug. One more thing to plug.
We're plugging. I got to plug.
Dave wants to plug.
Dave and his wife and Melody and I will be talking Hamilton with you guys on Saturday. I'll be really excited. So if you watch Hamilton, check that out. But what Santore and I are going to try to work on, and Corey's in here, so maybe he could be one of our first guests, is we're going to do a show that I haven't really named yet. I'm thinking about the Doc Box. I think it'd be a really cool idea, the Doc Box.
I like that.
We're going to just talk to former skippers and other people that we worked with, have them come on and guest on our show, and just tell you stories about what it's like to really live in the jungle and work on the Jungle Cruise. So, Corey, if you're down with that, make a chat out in the chat room. Let us know. We'll get in touch. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll do that. Okay, so here we're going to run it through. Here's everything you guys need to know. If you want to follow us on Facebook, we're at Mile High Potcast and at Truckee Pacific on Facebook. On Instagram, we are at Mile High Podcast. And on Twitter, we are at High Podcast. Our email is themilehighpodcast at gmail.com and truckeepacific@gmail.com. I may have got those wrong.
You got them all right, dude. I think it's the first time. All right.
Our Venmo, when you want to give us money so you can keep seeing us do
we always get
like
that right.
This. I always get this. It's at Mile High Podcast and at Truckee Pacific. We figured, why not give you two places to give us money? Just in case you didn't like the name of one place that we gave you to give us money.
There's a reason behind that, James. There is a reason why we have two Venmos.
There's something behind it, but I just like money. So send us money. We'll keep doing it, and you'll feel special, and we'll make you feel special. You know, that's what we do. Shout out to all. All right. So thank you all for tuning into the Mile High